If you've been on the internet the past few weeks, then you've probably seen some diehard fans treating the Five Nights at Freddy's movie as a misunderstood masterpiece. And if you went to the theater to go see this film, then you already know it's filled with fan service and nostalgia bait that'll make even the most casual fan freak out. So yeah, it makes sense why this movie is loved, but oh boy is it a stinker. Even as a huge fan of the franchise who grew up with the games, learned the lore, read the books, and watched all the game theory and Markiplier videos, I gotta say that Five Nights at Freddy's isn't just a bad movie, it's a bad FNAF movie. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it. There's plenty of things to enjoy from it too. So grab your Fredbear plush, because we're going into the pizzeria to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now actually, the very beginning of the movie is a thrilling and immersive experience from the moment the Universal logo appears, preparing you for an anxiety-induced experience. Too bad the rest of the film is tonally different, making this random scene of an unnamed security guard feel like it's from an entirely different movie than the one we got. Oh well, at least we were spoon-fed some good old-fashioned animatronic action early on in the film, so we already know what to expect from the pizzeria, and our suspense isn't built for when an actual character we care about explores this place. If Scott Cawthon doesn't care about Fear of the Unknown, then neither should we. But you know, I honestly gotta say that the opening credits were a great nod to the game and a cool way of setting up some backstory, so I'll cut them some slack. We're then introduced to Josh Hutcherson's character, Mike, who spends half the runtime taking naps. Personally, I was surprised he didn't need to watch the Ahsoka show to go to sleep, but to each their own. Anyway, turns out he has major PTSD because his little brother was abducted when he was a kid. So when he thinks he sees a different kid being taken by a random stranger, he fulfills his duty as Paul Blart Mall Cop and proceeds to tackle, then beat the living crap out of this kid's dad in broad daylight for all the mallgoers to see. Surprisingly, he's only fired from his job and not arrested, or loses custody of his little sister Abby, a character who will come to annoy you as the film progresses. But because the movie needs to happen, Mike meets with a suspicious career counselor who offers him the night shift at an abandoned pizzeria.
You only have to worry about one thing: keeping people out. And keep the place tidy.
That's two things.
Mike turns it down because he really likes to reality shift at night, going back to his dreams to the day his brother was taken 25 years ago, trying to see if he can uncover any clues about who kidnapped his brother. Which is when we're introduced to Mike's mustache-twirling aunt, who wants to take custody of Abby. Not because Mike clearly has some anger issues and isn't well equipped to take care of this little girl, but because she wants a monthly government custody check. So Mike realizes he needs a job to keep his sister, because apparently the custody checks aren't enough for him, like they are for his aunt, and instead takes the night shift at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. You'd think from here on out it'd be similar to the video games, right? Full of jump scares, haunting animatronics, and 5 eerie nights. Well, you'd be completely wrong, because Mike just sleeps the entire first night and random children start to appear in his dream. It then cuts to his aunt, who is conspiring with a few strangers, talking about how cool it'd be to kill Mike, but realize that getting him fired from his job so he loses custody would be much easier to do. Such angels. Wait, is that MatPat?
It's just a theory.
Are you?
Don't you tell me how many calories I need.
So the gang decides that breaking into the pizzeria during the day and trashing it would get Mike fired. Except they're too dumb to realize Mike works the night shift. Why on earth would their daytime vandalism be Mike's responsibility? In night 2, Mike takes another nap, sees ghost children again, and then the film decides it wants to be about a twisted romance story between a random cop, Vanessa, and Mike. Vanessa shows up out of the blue in the pouring rain at like 2 a.m. super suspiciously, and despite Mike's one job to keep people out, he lets her inside the place. This is Scary Movie 101. You just don't do that.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Vanessa's sole purpose is to dump exposition and lore onto Mike, instead of letting him figure out the mystery of this place. And despite her oddly vast knowledge of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, he chooses to trust her. They spend the rest of the night together talking, and boom, daylight, which is when we see the gang from the diner break into Freddy's after Mike leaves his shift. And then we watch 5 minutes of what we actually came here for, pure animatronic action. which would unfortunately be the last time we saw the animatronics actually be scary.
Was that the bite of 87?
Kinda scary. They just looked so goofy with their facial expressions, it was hard not to laugh. There were barely any jump scares either, which was a staple for the games. The film fails to make their presence intimidating too. Personally, I think it's because we actually saw the animatronics move like normal people. What made the FNAF game so scary was the simplicity. 1 second you see a robot in the camera, the next second it's creepily staring at you in a hallway. You don't see them move, it just happens and it leaves so much to the imagination. But the film takes that aspect out of it, while also adding facial expressions to the once emotionless robots. Also, Chica's Cupcake somehow does most of the work out of all the animatronics, despite being an irrelevant character in the games. But I digress. While that's going on, Vanessa randomly shows up at Mike's house, like that's not creepy at all. You'll come to ignore the fact that she's a cop altogether, because apparently she has nothing better to do than trauma dump with Mike. But the film reminds you that she is a cop, because police chatter will randomly happen and then she leaves.
Should go.
On night 3, Mike decides to take his little sister to his job because he can't find a babysitter to watch her. And like a responsible guardian of this child, he decides to sleep during his shift again, instead of keeping his eye on his sister. After talking to ghost children yet again, he wakes up to find his sister missing and hearing her scream down the hall. When he goes to investigate, the animatronics are just tickling Abby for fun. Turns out Abby has been seeing ghost children the whole movie, and it just so happens to be that these robots are those ghost children. The same ghost children Mike has been seeing in his dreams. She also drew a picture of Mike's little brother being abducted, and the film glosses over that like it's not prophetic at all. Yet again, Mike isn't figuring anything out for himself. And you know what Mike does after he finds out all this information about children's spirits possessing robots? He takes Abby back another night.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth.
In night 4, guess who they see upon entering the pizzeria? Vanessa yet again. They all decide that they want to make a fort together, because that's what we really wanted from a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Remember when the animatronics were scary and imposed a threat? But I can't lie, it was a silly fun scene to laugh at, which was the intention. However, the film still can't choose what the tone of the movie is. Is it a mystery where Mike uncovers the tragedy behind his little brother? Is it an emotional story about a custody battle? Is it a horror movie with these scary robots? Is it a fun, goofy movie with these silly robots? Vanessa can't decide what it is either, because after they all share a fun moment together with these animatronics, she suddenly changes her demeanor.
If you ever bring Abby back here again, I will shoot you.
She says this as if she wasn't the one who initiated the wholesome fort building moment with them.
I think we could use the tables for the fort.
So Mike has his villainous aunt babysit Abby while he goes back to work one last time.
Five Nights at Freddy.
Of course, Mike takes another nap, meets the ghost children again, who offer him a chance to relive a happy dream where his brother lives, in exchange for Abby becoming a robot like them. So meanwhile, a robot literally shows up at Mike's house, murders his aunt, and then takes a taxi with Abby back to the pizzeria. Which then cuts to Mike, who is suddenly with Vanessa, who says to him,
I tried to warn you. I really did try, in my own way.
No, she didn't. He kept asking her questions, and she dodged pretty much all of them. And then another expositional plot twist is revealed by Vanessa that the man who took Mike's little brother was her father. So Mike decides to go back to the pizzeria because he realizes Abby is in danger and proceeds to fight the robots off. But the career counselor guy shows up in a bunny suit and turns out to be the villain the whole time. Who would have thought that the only other A-list actor in the movie was the villain? Career counselor guy proceeds to stab his daughter, the robots turn on him because Abby drew a picture, and he says the iconic line from the video game in the most boring, driest way ever.
I always come back.
And there you go. Everything is fine and dandy now. Mike realizes that he actually loves his sister, because that somehow was in question, and because the next movie needs to happen, Mike faces no consequences. We'll just ignore the fact that his aunt was found dead in his house during the middle of a custody battle, or that he turned in a stabbed police officer to the hospital from a crime scene with numerous missing dead people with no other witnesses. And Abby, who apparently learned nothing from the whole experience she went through, wants one thing.
Can we visit them sometime?
As if she wasn't almost killed by these animatronics. And there you go. The credits play and the fan service song comes on, teasing the sequel. That's literally it. That's the whole movie. I just want to point out that this film takes no effort in emphasizing the 5 nights Mike spends in the pizzeria. The 5 nights seem more like a coincidence, and they just sort of happen casually, so the title feels pointless. This movie had been in the works for about 8 years. 8 years ago, I was in middle school, and now in college. I hate to say it, but the wait was not worth it. The film lacked a lot of elements that were crucial to the games, so it didn't feel like a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. But criticism aside, I really did enjoy watching this movie. It was a cute fanservice movie that rewarded you for keeping up with the game lore. It had fun moments to laugh at, and is a good movie to watch with your friends who will appreciate dumb movies. Personally, I can't wait for the sequel, Five Nights at Prison, because with the way the movie ended, Mike is heading there for sure. Or to his bedroom, because he really needs to take a nap.